Now, regularly on a Thursday at around about this time, I take the opportunity to chat with a member of the team of the Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit of the Salvation Army, who do absolutely brilliant work, holding the government to account for the policies that affect some of the most disadvantaged in our society in particular. And today, a new head, a new director to that Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit. Welcoming to the program, Dr. Bonnie Robinson. Kia ora, good morning. Thanks for your time today.
Kia ora, good to be here.
Now, I suppose some big shoes to fill in that regard. Some tremendous work been done by the Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit over the years. But what of your background, Dr. Robinson? What sort of work have you been involved with previous to this new appointment?
Well, certainly, yes, very big shoes to fill. And I'm really delighted to be joining the unit and be part of that fantastic work. I guess my career and life has been dedicated in the social service, social justice space. I actually helped establish the Social Policy Unit 20 years ago. It
Okay.
was myself and Major Campbell Roberts who were the first two people in the unit. So it kind of feels like coming full circle for me at the end of my career to come back and be part of continuing that work. So I actually trained as a Presbyterian minister when I was young and was briefly in parish ministry, but was always really interested in that social service, social justice space, and really working for a much more just and equitable society, and for ensuring that people have what they need to be able to thrive and to live. So I jumped from the sort of pastoral ministry into social services, social policy, social justice. So I've done a mix of working in practical social service delivery at all sorts of levels, and also doing the social policy, social justice analysis research type work. The last sort of 10 to 15 years I've been in senior positions, CEOs, general manager roles of organisations, but felt like I wanted to come back to the space where we try and, I guess, change the things that might be driving some of the need and really switch off that tap that causes the harm.
That fence at the top of the cliff, as it were, and of course, Salvation Army do brilliant work at the bottom of the cliff on the coalface, but changing the policy, changing the mindset, changing some of the settings, and putting pressure on government departments through research. Wonderful work that is done, as I mentioned. Now, interesting that you're coming back full circle. Of course, a lot changes in 20 years. A week is a long time in politics. What do you see to be some of the current challenges that these changes have brought about? How are things different than the needs that you saw 20 years ago?
Well, in some ways they're different, and in some ways they're not. It was quite interesting when I got the role. I went back and found some of the things I'd written 20 years ago. And in some cases, things have moved on, which is fantastic, and things have improved. In other places, I could have just changed the dates and the numbers, and the issues remain the same. So I think things have moved on. We've had some improvements in areas such as child poverty, but there's still a long, long way to go with that. But we have seen, that starting to go down, which is fantastic. And I guess the challenge going forward is, will those things that were put in place that were starting to make a difference, making sure that those policies continue and they don't get changed. Same with income inequality. Some of that has started to close up, but there's still a very large gap in income inequality, and people struggling at the bottom end to have sufficient to meet daily needs. So how do we actually structure things so that all people have what they need to live a good life, and to be able to contribute and to use their God-given gifts and skills in the world and society? Because no one wants to come to a food bank, and people want to be able to provide for themselves. And I think that's one of the things that's stayed constant and maybe grown. I'm old enough to remember when the food bank need for food banks really started to take off, and we all thought this will stop, this will peel back, but it's still there, and it's now a core part of our social welfare system, that people have to rely on others to feed their families, which we really don't want to see that. So continuing to work on that and saying we need to be supplying incomes that enable people to provide the necessities of life, the basics of life, and be able to thrive. I think another area which is of interest to the Salvation Army, and also of personal interest to me because my husband actually works in the prison system as a chaplain, is the whole area of what we do for people who've been in prison and reintegration, and how we support them not to continue in a life of crime. And we don't have very good stats on recidivism here. We've got high levels of people going back to that. And we don't do enough to support people who really do want to change and to get out of that lifestyle. And then there's the social harms of alcohol and gambling that just devastate whānau communities and do a huge amount of harm, and yet are advertised and promoted, and we're needing to deal with the harm, but also to try and protect people and communities from those social harms. So all those things continue to be challenges. They've been there for 20 years. We've made little inroads, but there's a lot of work still to do.
Certainly plenty to be getting on with. In some ways, I suppose, is it discouraging that 20 years on we're still facing the same problems? We're still, governments have come and gone, and we've had a range of different prime ministers and policies and approaches to tackling poverty and some of the issues that you've mentioned, but the needle hasn't seemed to move. In some ways, is that discouraging that perhaps we're not making the difference that you thought that we might 20 years ago?
I think we have to look at the stuff that has changed, and sometimes it might seem small, but it will actually be significant. 20 years ago, for example, you struggled to have some politicians accept the word poverty. And I think we've all accepted that we do have poverty in New Zealand now. That's not an argument we have, and the discussion is around how do we overcome that. So there are small gains, and sometimes there's big gains in the family violence area, for example. Although we still do have very high rates of family violence, I think we've absolutely shifted as a society in terms of our understanding of that and our acceptance of it. It's no longer acceptable. People know it's wrong. People want to make change there. And now we're in this situation of how do we best support people to live violence-free, to get out of violent relationships, to have better ways of communicating and dealing in relationships. So you need to keep hold of the things where we have shifted the dial, and we've shifted it in a range of areas. We have the living wage now, for example, and that concept. But certainly, there's still a lot to go. And I think one of the things that the Social Policy Agency can do is be that continuous sort of mirror and monitor that goes, here we want to celebrate what's worked, and let's make sure we keep going with it. But here we still have work to do. These are still issues that need to be dealt with, and I think encourage longer term thinking, because many of these issues, they don't fit in a 3-year political cycle. They're going to take longer than that. And what we need is people who look strategically and go, what do we need to put in place now so that over time we can really see a significant shift in this issue?
This opportunity to speak truth to power, to be the modern day prophets, I suppose, speaking to the rulers of our nation. Are they listening? Are they paying attention? Has the Salvation Army earned the right to speak into policy issues for various governments, do you think?
I think that politicians do listen to the Salvation Army and the Social Policy Unit. From obviously, I'm very new back in the role, but from what I've heard and seen, we do have good access. And I think one of the reasons for that is the Salvation Army does deliver a lot of service on the ground. We have at least 150,000 plus people who come through the Salvation Army services. So we're kind of putting our energy where the need is,
Yep.
and we really say because we see. We're not just talking about these issues in theory. We're
Yes.
seeing the needs every day. We're talking to people. We're seeing what's happening in communities. And we take that and, in a sense, honour those stories of real people and what's happening, and take that into the policy and political field. And I think that's what keeps the respect and the listening going, is that people may disagree with our conclusions, but they know that we're seeing what we're seeing at our food banks and in our counselling and in our addiction programs, and that's real and it's happening to real people. And when people hear those stories of actually how people are being harmed by some of these things, I think it does bring us together. We may debate the solutions,
Yep.
but we know that there's issues that we need to work together on.
Well, Dr. Bonnie Robertson, congratulations on your appointment. Plenty of work to be getting on with, but thank you for taking the time to chat with us today.
And thanks for your time.